The first step to make these cards is to cut out a rectangle from cardstock that will hold up to a wet medium. So I'm using Bristol smooth cardstock, but you can use whatever kind you like. I'm also using my Big Shot Plus to cut out the rectangles. I'm using the largest size die in the Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle set, but you can use whichever die cut you have that'll cut an A2 size rectangle. If not, you can also just cut out an A2 size card front to match your card. For this card, I'm going to be doing a stencil background with Nuvo Embellishment Mousse. I'm using a Tim Holtz shifter stencil, and I'm putting down purple tape, which is a low-tack tape, to hold the stencil in place. You can use any low-tack tape. I'm using the Nuvo Embellishment Mousse Fusion Red and also a Nuvo spatula to apply the mousse over the stencil. On the stencil, you'll see the top ones here with the openings is where the mousse will go in. Those darker shaded ones are actually closed, and the mousse doesn't go in there. That's actually to help you line up the stencil whenever you move it to put on more peppermints, and I'll show that later. If you haven't used the embellishment mousse before, it kind of is like soft butter, so it's very easy to work with. But you want to make sure that when you're done with it that you close the lid, and people have suggested that you put a press-in seal on top to keep it from getting dried out. I didn't have any, so I used plastic wrap. Also, excuse my band-aid, but I have a new puppy, so she's been chomping at my hands, and also with it being winter, my hands are kind of dry. If you'd like to check out my new puppy, I do have some videos on YouTube. You can see our cute puppy. She's very cute, but also very chompy. After I finished each section in the card fronts, I washed off my stencil and brush and work area to make sure that the embellishment mousse didn't dry on the stencil, because once it dries, it's hard to get off. And then I also needed to let the embellishment mousse dry before moving on to the next section. Otherwise, I probably would have smeared it. After you clean your stencil and also let the embellishment mousse dry, which takes several minutes, then you can go ahead and position the stencil to continue adding to your card front. One thing I like about the embellishment mousse is it has a shine to it, so you kind of get a foil look, not quite as shiny as foil, without having the foiling process. So since I don't have a foiling machine, I really like this. While I'm waiting for the embellishment mousse to dry, I'm going to stamp the message inside of my blank cards. I'm using Tim Holtz stamp platform to do this. And I like using it because if you make a mistake or you don't get something dark enough, you can stamp again and it'll still be in the same place. You can also use blocks, but I usually have trouble using those. The sentiment I'm using comes from Lawn Fawn Sprinkled with Joy, and it says, "May your holidays be sweet." And I'm using a candy cane that came from the Lawn Fawn Love You Latte collection. But you can use whatever stamps match your card or the sentiment that you like. Now that my mousse has dried, I'm going to go ahead and stencil another row of peppermint candies, and this is where the shifter stencil comes in handy. You line up the peppermints that doesn't have the holes over the ones you already did, and this offsets the next row. And then you just stencil as before. One tip I heard from several people was to darken your stencil first. So what you do is just take a black stamp pad and run it over your stencil first and then rub it off, and that makes the blank ones stand out so you can line it up easier. And I did that before. And then I'm going to go ahead and put on the embellish mousse in the same way as I did before. And you keep doing this. You go ahead and stencil and then move your stencil, let it dry, and while it's drying, make sure that you clean off your stencil so the embellishment mousse doesn't dry on your stencil. While I'm waiting for it to dry, I'm going to go ahead and do my 3D images. You punch out the images and then use dimensional adhesive to stack the images. I have some videos that show how to do this. Each of these punch outs will make 3 different cards, but I'm only making 2 because I already used one. Dimensional adhesive is usually made with foam, so I made my own out of chipboard and double-sided adhesive. You can check out my video on how to make your own. Now that the Nuvo mousse has dried, I'm going to go ahead and put on a layer of Nuvo Glimmer paste, and this is Moonstone. It has kind of a translucent look to it, and it has glitter in it, so it gives your card a shiny appearance. And it looks really good for Christmas. After you finish this, you'll need to let it dry for a couple of hours because it'll be very wet. Also, make sure that you clean your spatula and your work surface right away. I used a baby wipe because otherwise you'll have glitter sticking to everything and it'll dry and you won't be able to get it off. After the front of your card has dried, then you can go ahead and put double-sided adhesive or whatever type of adhesive you like on the back of your card front and put it on your card. I like using this double-sided tape runner. It's a Scotch ATG gun, and I like it because it is refillable, and unlike a lot of refillable ones, you just replace the tape part. A lot of them replace the whole plastic cartridge. So I think this one, even though it costs a little bit more, it's more eco-friendly. The last step, you need to adhere your pop-up images to your cards. I'm making 2 because I already used one in a previous video. And on that one, I didn't do a stencil background. I just used pattern paper for my background. And that made it a lot easier and faster, but you can do this many different ways. You can check out my other videos where I show other ideas for using these pop-up images. And also I have a video I'll link that will show you how to use the dimensional adhesive with these pop-ups. And please be sure to subscribe to my channel.